What's up everybody, Coach Mills here, coming at you with a brand new Valorant video. And in this video, we're going to be doing the ultimate weapon breakdown comparison, where we break down the Phantom versus the Vandal, the Classic versus the Ghost, and the Spectre versus the Stinger, so that you know exactly when to use each weapon for the most guaranteed impact in your games, and you know the scenarios when to not use certain weapons because they honestly kind of suck. So we're going to break all that down. We'll go to the Game League website right now for $50 off our lifetime subscription, so you have all the in-depth guides, advanced VAR reviews, and everything you need to climb the ladder. So don't miss out on this amazing opportunity in the links down below. But without further ado, let's jump into the video. Now, the first weapon comparison that we're gonna break down is none other than the Vandal versus the Phantom, which is a really hotly contested debate because a lot of people like the feel of the Vandal, but then when they look at pro play, they see that basically no one uses the Vandal, at least in comparison, a much smaller percentage. So a lot of people are asking, is the Phantom a superior weapon? But right off the bat, using the data that we have, it is just obvious that the Phantom is the superior weapon in pro play. But that is very, very specific because just being the superior weapon in a pro environment does not mean it's the superior weapon, period. For us, considering we're not pros, we just play ranked. You see, there are certain things about the Phantom that are gonna just automatically thrive in a pro environment. When you're executing on sites in a particular way at the same time as your team, spamming through smokes and don't wanna know where the enemy or the fire is coming from, doing joint wall bangs, or just having more refrag swings, the Phantom is better in all those axes. Now that being said, when you're playing your average rank game, do you have a consistent execution with your team? Is the enemy team consistently using smokes to block off your entrance and it's actually worth a lot of value to not have a trace around directly to where you are? Are you getting into joint battles where it's really scrappy and it's like 3v3 and you need to be able to control your recoil on multiple enemies, or are you getting in a lot of 1v1s? You need to ask yourself all these questions, and sometimes it's really going to depend on the character you're playing. For instance, if you're playing a character like Omen, you could set up a lot of these scenarios yourself. You could set up a lot of these smoke on point executes and a lot of these flash plays that the Phantom is really going to thrive in. So in that environment, the Phantom is just going to be amazing for you, even if normal ranked is not going to have the same conditions. Now, the third thing that you need to understand about the Phantom is that it's just a more noob friendly weapon. Running and gunning, as we've seen many times, is something that's viable on the Phantom, and it's going to be easier for you to actually hit shots when you're swinging, and it's just going to be more forgiving in general for the worst mechanically disciplined player. Now that being said, typically the combination of the Phantom being more noob friendly and also more pro play oriented is usually good enough to justify running it. Basically, it's a gun that is going to be easier on you when you're at the lower ranks, when you just need to be more consistent, and it's going to be a gun that you can use once you get to the upper tier of ranks where the play imitates pro play a lot more and you're going to get more value out of it. So these are the big arguments for running the Phantom. But let's go to the arguments about when to pick the Vandal. Now, the first and most important thing that you need to understand about the Vandal when directly comparing it to the Phantom is that Vandal is the superior 1v1 weapon. Taking any 1v1 aim duel, doing mechanical checks like challenging mid on Haven or just challenging any long angle, these are the places where the Vandal really thrives, and this is also a place where if you're fundamentally better than your enemies mechanically, you can get a lot of kills and carry games by getting easy picks by aggressively challenging these angles. Now, if any of you have ever played free-for-all and tried to play free-for-all with the Phantom, like, it's okay, but it feels like Vandal users do have the leg up in that environment, which they 100% do, because when it comes to 1v1 duels or a series of 1v1 duels, the Vandal just really thrives, having more effective range, more first shot accuracy, and of course being able to one-shot headshot from any range. Now, the next big argument for picking the Vandal is that it's more reliable at a long distance. It's one of the few other weapons that can challenge an operator, especially if you have really disciplined crosshair placement. On top of that, you can challenge long sightlines up against other weapons like a Phantom. If you're just holding a really long sightline aimed down the sight, that Phantom isn't going to be able to consistently swing the corner and one-shot you before you get to line up a really easy tap headshot. Now that being said, we talked about how the Phantom is a more noob-friendly weapon. So that just implies that the Vandal is much harder to use, and this is true. The Vandal will challenge all of your fundamentals to get a certain amount of value, where you really could actually be pretty sloppy with a lot of your different fundamentals when you're using the Phantom and still get a decent amount of value. The type of fundamentals I'm talking about are the type that I talk about in every video: crosshair placement, counter strafing, and recoil control. All three are going to be way easier to execute on the Phantom than the Vandal, and like I said, you need a certain amount of skill to tap into the power level of the Vandal. But the thing is, when you start tapping into that high level of skill, you're really also going to notice the scenarios where the Phantom is going to be able to get more value in certain games, especially when we talk about abusing all the things that the Phantom can do that the Vandal just cannot. The one thing that you have to be really careful of if you do plan on using the Vandal is crouch committing to every single one of your kills, which is something that a lot of players do, especially in the lower ranks, as they're trying to get better and better at the game. But with the Vandal, the more kills that you can confirm with good crosshair placement and not crouching allows you to remain much more mobile, and it's going to empower one of the big benefits of the Vandal, which is that it can act like a one-tap weapon that you can tap, kill an enemy, and instantly change positions without having to rely at all on spray control or committing to sprays like you would normally do with the Phantom. And if you can't tap into that power level and you're actually crouch spraying every single kill you come across, are you really tapping into what makes the Vandal so great in the first place if you're not actually committing to any headshots and keeping yourself mobile? No, you are not. Now, all in all, I presented both arguments for both of the different weapons. And the thing is, it's actually going to be really subjective to your certain situation, your rank, the character you use, and what you really want out of your weapon. Yes, the Phantom is going to be more consistent value, it's going to be more noob friendly, and if you manage to get a certain coordinated style of team, or you're playing at a very high level that imitates pro play, the Phantom can be very, very good. But the Vandal, in the way that ranked play often happens, or the way that games in ranked often happen, is it's gonna just help you win a lot of these 1v1 duels and find impacted value in places where you might not have been able to with the Phantom. On top of this, both weapons can easily get you all the way from the low ranks to the highest tier play when you have Radiant players still preferring either the Vandal or the Phantom. But I think I laid out enough important things to consider so that you can make the decision for yourself which weapon to run in which scenarios. Now, the next big comparison that we're gonna break down is the Classic versus the Ghost, and pros are really starting to choose the Classic plus armor more and more because of the BS it could pull off. Let's roll a clip from none other than Ninja right here.
Standing. Spike planted. One enemy remaining.
Oh my god, dude, no way.
Now, all joking aside, that was a pretty goated clip from Ninja, but this is the big discussion that is often happening, and we're seeing more and more where pro teams are often doing Classic plus armor rather than rocking a Ghost at all. You see, the Classic gives you the same amount of survivability up against the Ghost because you can take that initial headshot, and the Ghost person with no armor can only take 2 headshots as well. So it's the same time to kill, but the Classic right click is just absolutely broken, as we all know, as we saw from that clip. Now, that being said, however, the Ghost is silenced. It has a bigger clip, and from the furthest ranges, Ghost is going to be more consistent and reliable. This is why if you do buy a Ghost, it is extremely important to position as far away as possible so that you stay outside the range where multiple right-click bullets can hit you in the head. As you saw from the clip that we broke down, yes, Ninja actually was able to hit right-clicks from really far away, but it wasn't a ton of damage. So if you make sure to keep your life high, you don't just trade damage very frivolously, and you keep executing from those long ranges outside of that Classic right click range, that is the real way to get the leg up in that pistol matchup. Now, on top of this, this is why it's so important to dynamically change how you engage as a team on pistol round depending on how many of you have X gun. If all of you have more Ghost pistols, you should all be poking and pushing areas with much larger sight lines, and if you are all using Classics, you want to do a much more rush based push where you aggressively take space on point, you trade damage, not to mention you could survive ghosts just hitting you, but it's a lot easier for y'all to refrag with classic pistols when you are very close to these ghost users so that you're guaranteed right click value. So if you get some damage on a ghost pistol person but you die, your ally can easily follow up on that because you're within that 15 meters or less range where the classic right click is very consistent to at the very least hit one pellet, but more often than not guarantee that you get that refrag. So this is just something that you need to be thinking about before you execute on a site. Now the big takeaway for you though is classic is just going to be a more forgiving weapon in general. It has a very high skill ceiling, and outside of a few agents like Reyna who want to poke from range and secure kills for her devour, classic plus armor is not only going to be cheaper, but it's going to be an extremely reliable way to get a certain amount of value in every single game, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see classic right click nerfs before too long, so definitely abuse this while it's still in the game. Now the last thing that we really gotta talk about, the last breakdown, is the Stinger versus the Spectre, which are the two weapons that are most notoriously picked in either force rounds or specifically in rounds after you win that first pistol round. And both of these would be considered the running and gunning gods of Valorant, with both weapons being almost perfectly accurate while you're running and gunning. Now that being said, the Stinger is becoming more and more picked in pro play versus the Spectre. Now yes, the Spectre is silenced, has a larger clip, and is more reliable. This means that after you win that pistol round, if you go up against other weapons that are a lot weaker than the Spectre, like if the enemy team only just uses a classic pistol for instance, the Spectre is just gonna feel more reliable. And a lot of times when you have someone that buys a Spectre on that second round after they won that first round, they just get to clean up the kills, push into the enemy team, and get 1, 2, 3 of these free eco frags, and it feels really good to use the Spectre, right? Now this is because the gun has, like I said, a larger clip and is very reliable for doing a certain amount of damage, so up against worse guns, you're just gonna have a better time. Now the big problem with this though is it really starts to fall off when you start talking about either force rounds or enemies just hard saving. If the enemy team forces up to Stingers and they execute from a very close effective range, the Spectre is actually gonna lose that 1v1 by a landslide. Yes, the Spectre is more consistent from longer ranges, but in true 1v1s and in scrappy fights, the Stinger is gonna be able to do the exact same job. Not to mention, if you play really disciplined with the actual alternate fire of the Stinger use, you could still fight enemies that save in that pistol second round after y'all won and still challenge them on range and still beat them from range. But when the enemy upgrade after they save to these ARs, you can still challenge them from very close ranges, abusing the not only time to kill but the running and gun aspect of Stinger, which is a lot of pro players are doing, and of course in ranked play it's just running rampant right now. Basically what I'm saying is the Spectre might seem reliable, and maybe when you go get all those eco frags it feels really good, but time and time again we're seeing how powerful the Stinger is, not only at being comparable in that second round when the enemy's saving, but just going up against better and better guns. And if you combine all those benefits of the Stinger for 600 less credits, it's really hard to justify buying the Spectre a lot in your games unless you're specifically like Reyna and you're going to be using your ultimate and the faster rate of fire is going to be really abusable on a high round weapon and you're gonna have a higher time to kill. But outside of that, the Spectre is just going to be a far inferior weapon on average than the really honestly overpowered Stinger. And just like with the classic right click, I would be surprised if the Stinger stays in its current state for much longer. So like I said, abuse it while it's still here. But speaking of abuse your enemies with a GameLeap.com premium subscription, because right now we have a $50 off your annual subscription in the links down below. You can learn from the best of the best high quality guides, in-depth VOD reviews. We got it on the Game Leap website, so do yourself a favor, go check it out in the links down below. But that's all I got for you today. Thanks so much for coming by. I'm Coach Mills, and of course, until next time,